The Detroit Pistons had media day yesterday. We had a lot of fun and interesting quotes from players, coaches, and general manager. What were some of my biggest takeaways from media day? We'll talk about that in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you have not already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast, or you can leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. So like I said in the cold intro, Pistons had media day yesterday. By the time most of you guys listen to this, it was on the 26th. We're going to be talking about all my takeaways from media day, a lot of these quotes that came out. But real quick, I have to give you guys a little bit of an update of what the podcast is going to be looking like, looking ahead a little bit. As you guys have been known for a while now, I'm not going to be here starting the 28th until the 5th of October. I'm going to be completely gone. But the schedule that I have planned out right now, I believe this is how I'm going to stick to it. If it changes, I'll be sure to let you guys know. You guys will be getting an episode on the 28th and the 27th. This one will be the 27th. You guys will begin an episode on the 28th. I have another one scheduled ahead with you guys, or for you guys. On the 29th, it's going to be a crossover with the Magic, Locked On Magic host. We're going to be previewing the first game of the season. And then I have one more episode scheduled out for you guys, so probably October 3rd. That's going to be a mailbag podcast. So if you guys want to have your questions answered, comment in the comment section down below or tweet over at me at Kuka Hill and let me know you guys are trying to get on the mailbag. But that's your guys' update for how the podcast is going to be looking like in the next week and a half or so. But anyways, let's get to media day now. So I'm going to go in order of how the interviews went. They started off with Troy Weaver, and then he went Dwayne Casey, and then went to players. So I'm going to talk about what I heard from Troy Weaver and Dwayne Casey and what my biggest takeaways from what they said, what I'm taking away from that. And so far, I believe my biggest takeaway with Troy Weaver and what he said, it seems like the main focus of what Weaver was really trying to push is that there is phases to building a contender and building a championship style team. And over and over and over again, he kept saying, we're in a competitive stage. We're in a competitive stage. There's multiple phases, and the phases we're at is the competitive stage. We want to compete this season. So he didn't necessarily say anything about winning a lot of games. He didn't mention really anything about making the playoffs. I know he said something about, he did say something about how he wanted to see this team win more games compared to last year. He wanted to see them be in more games. But he didn't really put an expectation on them when it comes to win total or playoffs or compete for a play-in. What he's really pushing, and it matches with what has been said from assistant GMs in the offseason and what's been sprinkled in here and there throughout the offseason, is that the Pistons' goal, at least from the front office, is they just want to see this team competing in each games. They want to see this team. They don't want to see them getting blown out. They don't want to see them losing by 20-plus points. They want to see them being competitive from the first quarter to the second quarter to the third quarter to the fourth quarter. And if they lose close games, or they lose a lot of games at the end of the fourth because they're a young team, so be it. But it seems like what he's really trying to push forward and what he really wants fans to understand and his own roster to understand is the fact that they want to go out and compete and let everybody know that you're not going to come to LCA, or Detroit's not going to travel to you guys and be a walkover. You're not going to just walk over them, and they're going to be a tough out for you. And if you take them lightly, they will smash you in. That's basically what I got from what Troy Weaver was saying. He said a few other things, obviously. It wasn't just about competing. One of the other things he said that I really liked was the fact he said people like to look outside the house, but says strongly that he believes an improvement has to come from within. That also matches up with all the moves he made in the offseason. If he wanted to go get answers from outside the house, he could have went after DeAndre Ayton. He could have went after before all that situation happened, but Miles Bridges. He could have went after Jalen Brunson. He could have went after a bunch of guys in free agency. They had a lot of cap space, but he chose to deal with what they had in their own house. He wants to see them develop, and he believes in these guys to develop. So I feel like what Weaver said, Weaver didn't really give much didn't give much new information. Didn't like say anything that we didn't already know. It kind of just felt like that he was just reaffirming the things that his actions spoke throughout the offseason with some of the moves he made. He also went on to say something about he continued to preach how he drafts people over players. He said the fact that the young players are all around the same age and they all like being around each other and they're all fun around each other. They get along. They know each other's. I believe Isaiah Livers also went on later on in his interview, but this kind of goes together that they hang out with each other's families. They bring these significant others around each other. Like they go out together. Like he talked about how that is a big part of team building and the fact that that points to the fact of why he says he drafts people over players. So yeah, nothing really too crazy from Weaver here. He just really, like I said, I think he was just reaffirming a lot of the stuff he did, a lot of the moves he made in the offseason with some of his quotes. Besides that, I don't think we really heard anything else too interesting from Weaver. He did say he feels pretty good, quote, pretty good about the backcourt rotation with Cunningham, Ivy, Hayes, and Kojo. Yeah, he just voiced pretty good confidence in that. Moving on to Dwayne Casey. Dwayne Casey actually did say a few things that I thought was pretty interesting. I don't agree with some of the things he said. He talked about how this team is the most balanced team he's ever had. He said he thinks this is the most deep team he's ever had with the Pistons, not Toronto, but since signing with the Pistons. And he also said he believes this is the most young talent he's ever had since being here. Now, the young talent, that's true. I do believe that's – I don't think anyone would argue with him. They do have the most young talent they've ever had since he took over the Pistons. Is it the most balanced roster he had? No, there's no – I can't believe that. I think his very first year in Detroit with Blake and Andre when they made the playoffs and they were looking like a 6th, 5th seed before Blake got hurt, that team was much more balanced than this team. It was also just straight up better. Blake was looking like an All-NBA second, third team guy. He eventually made All-NBA third. So I don't think this is the most balanced team that they've had. But he went on to say that he felt like this team, the roster that's been put together is a little bit more cohesive and makes a little bit more sense. So I think that's where he was really trying to go, that he felt like last year's roster was just a bunch of young guys thrown together and it didn't really mesh a lot. I feel like he was trying to say this year they have a lot of depth at each position. Now is it good depth? I don't know if you'd say that yet, but they do have a lot of that with their young guys. And I do feel like he was basically trying to say he feels like they have a lot of guys they can go to, a lot of competition that's going to be happening, and a lot of guys that give you different things. So I think that's what he meant. Do I think it's the most balanced team he's ever had with the Pistons? No, I don't believe that. Another thing that Dwayne Casey said that I thought was actually incredibly interesting, and I'm interested to see if he actually holds to his word on this. He said that it's more about production this year rather than letting players play through mistakes. It's going to be interesting to see if he actually means that, because I don't know if he's going to hold true to that. I feel like you're going to want Jay and Ivy to make mistakes and learn from them. Even Cade's in his second year. You're going to want Cade to make mistakes and learn from them. You don't want to be giving these guys short leashes. Even Sadiq, Stu, Killian, the other rookies, other young guys. I think that maybe means more to some of the guys like Kevin Knox, who when they get their chance eventually, you don't get like multiple chances. If you don't play well in that spot, the next guy's going to come up and try again. So I think he's more so talking about Kevin Knox, Hamidou Diallo, Nerlens Noel, some of the older guys, Nerlens Noel. Some of those guys are like fringe rotation players. I feel like that's more so who he's talking about. Me personally, I don't believe that they're going to have a short leash with like the mainstay young guys if they're making mistakes. I think you have to let those guys play through mistakes and let them learn from that. So I'm interested to see if he actually holds on to his word, like right there. If we get into the season and we see Sadiq making a mistake, Killian making a mistake, Stu making a mistake, Ivy making a mistake, he's pulling them out for someone who isn't, then we can come back to this and say he was telling the truth. But right now, I don't know if he's telling the complete truth there. He might be telling it a little bit, like I said, with some of the fringe rotation guys. But I don't think he's going to have a short leash for the mainstay rotation guys. Just to add on to that, he also went on to say being young is not an excuse anymore. And I can understand that. You want to see development. You want to see these guys get better. Simply being young and throwing them out there, I get that. You want to see them get better. You can't keep using we're young as an excuse forever. Even though I think this year might be still a little bit of the excuse, I definitely get the sentiment that he's saying. And I'm interested to see if he actually plays to this. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the things that we heard from some of the players. I thought this was really interesting. We also got an interview from Killian Hayes through BN Sports. It's in French. I was able to have my dad and one of you guys who listen to the podcast help me translate it to English. We'll talk about that interview because I thought that was incredibly interesting. But first, you guys got to hear from one of our lovely sponsors, BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for football betting info this season and basketball coming right around the corner. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game that you can find. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for our sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-minute scores for every sport that's out there. The fastest and easiest way to check out all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, golf, NHL, all kinds of sports, you name it, you can find it over at betonline.net. Head to betonline.net or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. If you head over there right now, like we've been saying, you will see that Jaden Ivey has the third highest odds to win Rookie of the Year. You can look at that, MVP favorites, championship favorites, first overall pick favorites, best record, worst record, most improved, all that kind of stuff at betonline.net. Make sure you're checking that out on your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So let's get into some of the things that we heard from some of the players. And I tweeted this out, and I kind of want to, I'm going to say it, and I'm going to explain it a little bit more because I don't want people to take this the wrong way. There's some players that I heard from today that they talk very well, that they speak very well with the public. And that's not to say, when I first tweeted it out, some people took it the wrong way, as if I was trying to say that some of the players don't know how to speak. No, it's not that. It's that some players with the media give you really good quotes and really insightful answers. Some players just don't even want to really mess with the media at all, so they give you like short answers and they don't really, they're not really friendly with it because they just don't want to be dealing with the media. And some players just aren't really great with public speaking, so they struggle giving really insightful answers. I feel like there's a few players that stood out to me today that gave really mature and insightful answers that I think they're going to be incredible quotes throughout the season. Like, if you want to hear something nice, you want to hear something that give you some information, these are the type of players you want to go to because they're going to tell you some stuff. And the first one that we talked to was Isaiah Livers. Isaiah Livers, I thought, was incredibly mature. He sounded very mature, I should say, and gave very insightful answers in what he felt like with this team. He talked about how he's been working on so many things this past offseason. He talked about he doesn't want to be one-dimensional. He feels like he'd be able to answer the bell with just about anything coach asks of him, whether that's shooting, playing defense. He said pick and roll. He said handling the ball. He mentioned all kinds of things. He felt like that he could really impact the floor, impact the team, and he's ready to do anything the coach asks for him. So I really like to hear that from him. That backs up what we heard from Michael Lancaster in a few episodes ago, Isaiah Livers' trainer this past offseason. So I really like to hear that. It sounds like he was really oozing confidence and really excited for this season. He talked about how this preseason is going to be one of the most exciting preseasons of his entire career. But yeah, Isaiah Livers was just great. He's one of the ones, like I said earlier, that talked about how close this team is. They go out to dinner. They go out to breakfast. They don't just go out and play basketball all the time. They go to see a movie together. They'll bring their significant others together, bring their family members together. Like, everyone's just so closely tight, and they're very cool with each other. He talked about how they really try to embody that family ideal that they try to put out there in this franchise, and he thinks they really do it really well. And he's not the only player. That was one of the biggest things that we heard consistently from general manager to coach to player to player to player, is that they really feel like they are a family. They feel like they're really close. They feel like they embody what a family looks like. And that's really cool. I do got to say, when you have that kind of good environment, and that speaks to the culture that Troy Weaver and Dwayne Casey are building, that they want to have that kind of culture. They want to have a comfortable culture for guys to come to. They want guys to come here to play and feel at home. They want them to come play here and be happy. You don't want to be playing. If you're playing somewhere that you're not happy and you feel unwanted and you feel uncomfortable in the locker room, you can't really gel with any of the guys, it's going to impact your play on the court. You're going to feel uncomfortable. And I feel like the Pistons have made a really concerted effort to make it the complete opposite of that. They have a really nice culture in this locker room. I think it's really starting. When entering year 3 of this, I think it's really starting to show year 3. Like, these guys really like being around each other. And Livers echoed that over and over and over, just like other players did as well. Moving on to the next player, And like I said, we're going in order of how they were interviewed on media day, because I have all the notes here and I'd have to go up, down, and we'd probably get a little messy here. But next person we heard from was Killian Hayes. Killian, I thought, so Killian is one of the players I talked, at the beginning of this segment when I said, some players are not very good with the media. Like, they don't give you like really insightful answers. They more so just give you like the bland quarterback answers. You don't get much insight with their answers. Killian's one of those players, I feel like. I don't feel like he really gives you anything of substance. He just gives you more so yeah, man, I just want to play. I gotta be better, like that kind of thing. He doesn't really give you much insight usually, at least in my opinion. Maybe he has, but in my opinion, I felt like that Killian isn't one of the best guys that you want to talk with in the media. Today, I feel like that was not the case at all. I thought he was very insightful, very open, and he oozed a kind of arrogance and cockiness kind of that I really like to see, to be honest. I think if he can translate that to his game, like we've been talking about for the longest, I think everybody agrees that his aggression and confidence is really what's held him back a lot. Obviously, on the floor stuff, he has to get better at, but those two things really impact everything for him. He talked very confidently. He said that, quote, very confident about my shot. I worked on it all summer and did a few tweaks to it. He said that he's worked with various shooting coaches throughout the summer to get really comfortable with his jump shot. For those of you guys who follow him on Instagram or on Twitter and see all the clips that have been posted throughout the offseason, you'll see that he's been working with multiple different trainers throughout the offseason. Really like hearing that. I'm interested to see what few tweaks he's talking about, because last year I know they tried giving a wider base. In the few clips I've seen in the offseason so far, I feel like his jump shot and his form is more compact. It's not, you don't see him moving around too much, his lower body moving around, at least in the clips so far. It may be different when the season starts, obviously. But so far in the clips I've seen, I feel like one of the tweaks that he made was like getting more compact with his jumper. I'm interested to see if that's true or not. He also went on to say, quote, for me, just keep playing with confidence. I feel like that's big for me. He said, first two seasons were not ideal. They weren't what I was expecting, but I'm very excited for this next year. He said that, and he also went on to say the word aggressive, driving to the basket, confidence, like 20 times throughout his interview. Like, he said this he kept saying it over and over and over. I feel like it was something that was drilled into him this offseason by either his teammates, coaching staff, front office. I feel like we got a lot of that from him, and a lot of things we want to hear from Killian in today's media day. I'm like I said, I'm pretty shocked by that. Killian Hayes usually isn't the dude that gives you a lot of like good quotes and a lot of insight and stuff. But before we move on to the next player, there was another interview he did, like I said, with BN Sports. It was in French. I had my dad, who speaks French, and one of you guys who listen to the podcast helped me translate it, so I understood what was being said in here. And this right here is why I feel like he was really like oozing confidence and cockiness and kind of like some swag in what he was saying. So the first quote I want to say that I want to tell you guys, he said, they asked him about his role and goals for this upcoming season. And his answer was, I know what the team is wanting from me, but I have my own goals. And I really like hearing that from him, because at this point, the team probably just wants him to be a good backup point guard. That's probably what they want from him. But it seems like that's not what he wants from his career. As I read these quotes, you'll start to see. But it seems like that Killian Hayes still does not believe that his career is done as what he thinks it could be. He still believes he has a lot to give. And he thinks that at least this is my takeaway, him being a backup the rest of his career is not something he believes is in his future. He also went on to say, I worked a lot this summer. Nothing is given in Detroit. There's no excuses. I'm coming with rage this season. I know what I had to improve, shoot with consistency, my percentages and everything, but really just be mentally aggressive and not overthink it. I thought that was an incredibly insightful quote, because that's a lot of the criticisms that we've given Killian Hayes, and we haven't really heard him talk about that. It seems like he's heard everybody. It sounds like he's heard everybody. He's heard the coaching staff, the front office, the fans, people on Twitter, in the comment sections on YouTube. Like, it seems like he's heard everything, and he knows that this is his year, and this is what he has to do this year. He seems really confident in himself. He was also asked what those personal goals were. He said, quote, I'm going to keep them for me. I wrote them at home. I don't want to share it, but you'll see. He also talked about, again, team relationships, how great everyone gets along, how they all are a family and everything. So yeah, I thought that interview with BN Sports was really interesting with Killian Hayes. I'm gonna link that down below in the comments or in the info down below in the YouTube section. If you guys want to check it out. Another thing he said, and we'll wrap it up here. He was asked about Weaver's decision to draft a player at his position high in the draft. He said, quote, "It's not my decision, haha, but Jaden is a very good pick, very fast in transition, and it's not selfish." He talked about he was a really good guy too. So yeah, really insightful stuff I thought from Isaiah Livers and Killian Hayes on Media Day. We'll talk about what we heard a little bit from Sadiq and Cade Cunningham when we come back. I don't feel like Sadiq, the reason why we talked about Sadiq's quotes at the end, I don't feel like Sadiq really gave too much insight to a lot of his answers. A lot of it was just quarterback answers, I feel like, at least to me, which is fine. It's not like it doesn't matter, but that's why we saved him for the last. Cade said some fun things about the music scene in Detroit and some of his off-the-court stuff. I thought that was fun. But we'll talk about that when we come back. But first, you guys got to hear from some of our lovely sponsors. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button. Or if you're listening to one of the podcast platforms, leave a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform that is. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so Cade Cunningham talked about how we're just going to go right back into the Media Day stuff. Cade Cunningham talked about how he loves Detroit music, and he talked about how one of the artists that we had on the podcast, Sada Baby, they asked him about how, people from the city, celebrities from the cities, especially like rap artists, what's their relationship with the team. He talked about how a lot of them show a lot of support to the team. He feels like a lot of the people from Detroit, some of the big guys that are from Detroit in the city, the fact that they're showing so much support to them and showing that they are welcome and trying to get them connected and feel comfortable within the city definitely gives them a different kind of comfort when being in Detroit. He talked about how he thinks that's big for everybody on the team, and everyone really appreciates it. Cade also confirmed that he's been up to probably around 226, 227. That was something that Isaiah Livers also spoke to. Dwayne Casey also spoke to that. Sadiq Bey also spoke to it. They all talked about how Cade is noticeably bigger and stronger so far entering this year. We'll see if it translates, obviously, to NBA games. But Cade specifically talked about how he feels stronger on the court and that he feels like it's easier now to get to his spots. He feels like he doesn't get knocked off his spot as much anymore. He's noticed it a few times, he said, on the practice floor. He's noticed it a few times in some pickup runs, some workouts, whatever, that he was able to do some things that maybe he wouldn't have been able to do last year because he wasn't strong enough. So he thinks this year, him gaining that kind of strength, putting on that kind of weight, he thinks that's going to do wonders for his game. He also talked about how that's going to help him stay injury-free, falling on the ground so many times, especially with how much he got knocked on the ground last year and not get a foul call. Expecting that to happen again, you need to have some strength, some muscle on your bones for that, so you can sustain that throughout a full season. He feels like he's going to do that. He feels like he's at a point now where he's going to be all right. So it's interesting to see. We've seen pictures of him, how much bigger he looks. I'm really interested to see how he plays now. Are they going to play him in the post a little bit more? Because that was something we heard about coming out of college that we just didn't get a lot from. We didn't get a lot of that at all this past season. We got it a little bit more so when he drives to the rim and then he just turned into a post-up. We never really got design post-ups for Cade Cunningham, and that was something he was supposed to be able to do. So now that he's stronger, I'm interested to see if Dwayne Casey does draw up some post-ups for Cade, who's 6'6", 6'7", 7-foot wingspan, and really good touch and can finish with both hands. So I think that's something they can integrate into their offense, especially now with him being bigger. Another thing that he talked about was how he feels like he's going to be more ready this season for the length of the season. He felt like his rookie season, he talked about how it was a struggle a little bit. It was something you had to get flowing with. It's definitely different than college, playing 82 games, constantly being on the road, back-to-backs, road trips, all those kind of things. He said it's something that you need to be prepared for. And he feels like that's him going through that his rookie season is going to prepare him much more for his second season and beyond. He feels like he's definitely much more ready for that And that's basically all Cade really gave us. I don't think there was anything else really interesting that Cade really gave us outside of the whole Detroit rapping thing and how he loves Detroit music. He's cool with some people in Detroit, his comfortability. We talked about all that. So yeah, I don't feel like Cade really gave anything too crazy to us here. Saddiq Bey, I think Saddiq looked a lot like leaner to me. I don't know if any of you guys watched Media Day, but Saddiq looked, I don't want to say he didn't look smaller. He still looked very strong. It's just he looked a lot leaner. Like he didn't look like usually I would describe Saddiq like last year as bulky. I don't know if I would call him bulky right now. Like I'd say he's more toned now. Definitely still has that same strength. He has those shoulders still, but looks much leaner. I wonder why that was a part of offseason planning. If we're going to get an idea of why they thought that was a good way to go, maybe they thought maybe it could speed up his quickness, his speed. Maybe he can get up off the floor quicker, more explosive, etc. I'm interested to see why that was a route he took this offseason. But yeah, I definitely feel like he looks a lot leaner, at least to me. He talked about how every summer he works on every part of his game. He said he doesn't want to be one-dimensional. He doesn't want to be two-dimensional. He said he wants to be able to give defenses a lot of options at any point wherever he is on the floor. He doesn't want to just be a catch-and-shoot three-point shooter. He doesn't want to just be known as an outside shooter. He doesn't want to just be known as anything. He said he wants to develop and get skills to his bag to where he's able to do things at every area on the court and make defenses pay at any point, at every point on the court, at any point of the game. So I feel like that was something that we heard from all the players, really. All of them seem like that they want, and obviously I feel like you might hear this a lot through everybody's media day. Everyone's media day is going to be positive. You're not going to hear a bunch of negative stuff. But all the players seem to have echoed that they want to be they want to be the best versions of themselves this season. Not so much the best version for just the team. It feels like a lot of these guys have individual goals for themselves that they want to be the best versions of themselves, not just, this team, the Pistons need a catch and shooter, so I'm just going to be a good catch and shoot three-point shooter. No, they want to be the best versions of themselves and work towards that. Whether that ends up, and this is looking way down the line, but whether that means that they end up reaching that with the Pistons or not, they have individual goals for themselves, which I think is really important. You want to have, the teams usually are going to have goals for you that help them win. And that may not always be in the best interest of your own personal goals or personal endeavors. So I feel like I feel like every player should have their own individual goals that they put up for themselves, that they strive for. Because I feel like that's where the great ones, that's how you get great players. Some teams may not think they have it in them. A lot of people may not think they have it in them. But as long as that player has that goal for themselves and they're constantly striving for that goal, again, I feel like that's where you get the great players, the ones that eventually do reach it. That's how you get the great players. So I'm happy that we hear that from Saddiq. I'm happy we heard that from Isaiah Livers, a little bit from Killian Hayes. I thought it was really good to hear all that kind of stuff. And last person I guess we'll hit on real quick, not Isaiah Livers, Isaiah Stewart. Isaiah Stewart backed up the point that he's going to be shooting a lot of threes this year. He basically said he's going to be playing a lot of the four. He believes he thinks he's going to be playing with the big guy, another big guy next to him a lot. And he also gave a real interesting quote where he said that he thinks, or he looked to Al Horford this past offseason as a guy to like try to kind of craft this game after, someone who was able to develop an outside shot and do some things defensively that he feels like he can also do defensively. So I know that's a comparison that a lot of you guys actually have been making, Al Horford. So I thought it was really cool that he actually said Al Horford is someone he himself has been looking at to craft his game after. So that's really cool. Outside of that, I don't think you really got anything too interesting. A lot of hype up kind of quotes you got, a lot of things to get fans excited kind of thing. Nothing too crazy. I think that's all we got to really talk about. There's nothing really else. Like I said, Marvin Bagley, he said that he feels like this is the best group of teammates he's had. I can't help but feel like that's a little bit of a shot at Sacramento again. They have this beef that I feel like it's just never gonna stop. So I do feel like that was a little bit of a shot at them, but I'm sure he probably actually means that very, very much so. These guys really do feel like they get along really well together, and they all have worked so hard this offseason. So I really hope it pays off for them, man. I think that right there, to wrap up the podcast, is my biggest takeaway. I really hope this pays off for them because they sound like they've been working really hard, and they want it, not just for themselves, but for each other. They want each other to succeed. So I'm really rooting for them this year, man. I really hope that they develop and have the type of season that they want. Yeah, man, it's cool to have like this kind of season. It's cool to have like this kind of hope and young core now that wants to get better and is striving together to get better. It's going to be a lot of fun for us to watch this season. We're just a week away now from their first preseason game. I can't wait, man. Let me know in the comment section down below if you guys had any other takeaways from Media Day, or you can tweet me over at Twitter at Kukahill. Until the next podcast, I will see you guys later. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. Haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform that is. I'll see you guys in the next episode. I believe that one, I don't think that one's going to be the preview for the Orlando Magic game. I think I have something else up my sleeve for this next episode. I'll see you guys then. But stay tuned, stay safe out there, and peace out, everybody.